Good afternoon. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to my research proposal presentation. My name is Thawng, and I am a doctoral student in the Department of Teacher Education. My study is titled Intersecting Inequities, War, Poverty, and Educational Access Among Burmese Refugees in Indianapolis, Indiana. I do want to mention that this study is currently in the proposal stage and has not yet included a completed empirical component. The research design, methodology, and data collection procedures outlined in this paper are intended to guide the forthcoming investigation. It is anticipated that data collections and analysis will be conducted in the next phase of the study in the fall of 2026 with implementation plan for the upcoming research period. So, if you have any feedback, questions, or concern, please feel free to reach out to me. I will list my email at the end of my slide, at the end of my presentation. It would be a huge help. So, thank you in advance. To begin, my research is grounded in a global crisis forced displacement, which impacts over 117 million people worldwide. However, I want to narrow this focus to a critical local context, Indianapolis, Indiana. The city is a major resettlement site home to approximately 40,000 members of the Burmese diaspora, primarily Chin and Grand families. My work investigates how these families, having fled war and persecution, navigate the intersecting challenges of persistent poverty, deep-seated trauma, and the complex path to educational access in their new American home. The core problem is that poverty, amplified by the chronic stress of forced migration and war trauma, creates significant barriers to human development and educational success. As the data shows, high rates of PTSD compounded by structural barriers like limited English proficiency and low economic mobility create an intergenerational cycle of struggles. My study is significant because by exploring the narrative perspective, we move beyond just recognizing the problem and start identifying the specific mechanisms of resilience and the points where systematic support fails to meet community needs. Well, we know the Burmese community is large and resilient. Their voices are largely missing from the scholarly literature and the local educational discourse in Indianapolis. We lack narrative-based inquiry that explores the simultaneous influence of these intersecting factors, war, poverty, and migration on their educational lives. Therefore, my main research question is how do Burmese refugees in Indianapolis draw on migration experiences, community resources, and cultural adaptation to navigate educational barrier? I have many sub questions, but I do not have time to list all those questions. So the sub questions will guide our explorations into structural barriers, the interpretation of trauma, and sources of family resilience. The the literature review is organized around three critical themes. First, the impact of displacement and trauma, focusing on concepts like psychological rupture and the state of liminality, being stuck between two worlds, which profoundly affects focus and mental health. Second, structural inequality, which reframes poverty not as a personal failure, but as a systematic outcome of labor market stratification and the invisibility of refugee poverty. And finally, resilience and community. This body of work highlights the vital role of faith-based organizations and the concept of community cultural wealth as central mechanism for survival and educational support. My study is guided by three robust theoretical lenses. Social justice theory provides the moral imperative to address systematic inequities in resource distribution. This is completed by capability approach, which is crucial because it shifts the focus from simply providing resources to understanding and expanding the refugees' freedom to pursue a life they value, with education being a key capability. Finally, migration theory, including Menhavar's work on legal violence, provides the structural context to analyze how external forces shape the lived experiences and educational trajectories of these families. My chosen approach is a qualitative narrative inquiry. I chose this methodology because the experiences of war and displacements are complex, temporal, and highly emotional. Narrative inquiry, as defined by Clendenin and Corneli, is the study of experience as lived and told stories. This approach allows me to prioritize depth over breadth, honor the participants as co-authors of knowledge, and capture the rich emotional dimension of their journey, which simply cannot be captured through quantitative means. I will use purposive sampling to recruit 5 to 7 Burmese refugee families residing in Indianapolis, Indiana. The primary criteria are the individual must be 18 years old or older, and their family unit must have a direct experience of the migration journey, meaning they arrived as refugees. The small sample size is intentional for narrative inquiry, allowing me to spend extensive time with each family to collect data, thick, thick descriptive data. I'll be using community like the Burmese American Community Institute, BACI, to recruit, or maybe family friends, or some organizations that I've work with to get rich and thick data. Data will be collected through your rounds of semi-structure in-depth interviews with each participant. The protocol will be flexible to ensure participant-driven storytelling. The collection phase will also include member checking, in which I return transcripts to participants for review and correction, ensuring validity. For analysis, I will employ thematic narrative analysis using Nivo software to identify patterns within across their story accounts. Nivo is a software program that allows researchers to systematically manage, analyze, and visualize qualitative data and documents both individually and collectively. Ethically, confidentiality is paramount. All data will be pseudonymized and stored in encrypted formats. Um, I'm thinking about offering gift cards as a form of for their time, and I'll maintain a detailed reflexivity journal to monitor my own bias and ensure a trauma-informed approach is maintained throughout the research. So here is the proposed timeline for the remainder of the doctoral journey. The critical path begins immediately after proposal approval, with IRB clearance targeted for January 2026 that already passed. Data collection is scheduled for a focus period from January to March, and I've allotted this time to account for rapid building and ensuring access. The analysis and dissertation writing will occur through the first half of 2026, leading to a planned final defense in July, August 2026. This is just an example. I do not know. I've never done this, so this is just what I had in mind, but it could take longer as well, depending on how IRB and the data collections and analysis, just take all that, and then also the possibility of finishing my chapter 4 and 5. It is crucial to acknowledge potential challenges. The current political climate can create fear, requiring careful, sustained trust building due to the linguistic diversity of the Burmese community. Professional interpretations for various dialects will be necessary to ensure accuracy. um, I acknowledge the limitation of generalizability due to the small sample size, but again, this choice maximize the necessary depth of the narrative. Most importantly, working with individuals who have experienced trauma require a sensitive, ethical, and trauma-informed approach to prevent traumatizations during interview. So I would have to be emotionally intelligent and being careful. Um, so in conclusion, this research is fundamentally about transforming collective experiences into knowledge and advocacy by amplifying the voices of Burmese refugees. My study aimed to provide concrete, qualitative evidence that can inform culturally inclusive policy and practice within Indianapolis educational and resettlement systems. This work is intended to foster real educational equity for current and future generations. Thank you again for your time and careful attention to my research proposal presentation. And like I said, if you have any questions, feedback, concerns, um, feel free to, yeah, feel free to, as you can see, my email is listed here. So feel free to reach out. Thank you so much and have a great day.